127 passengers witnessed what happened when an elegant black woman's 15-year secret was finally revealed. On Flight 447, everyone thought the woman moving to first class was just another lucky passenger. But nobody knew her true identity. This flight would change the careers of 300 employees in just 10 minutes, because that woman wasn't just a passenger. Victoria Hamilton stood confidently in the business class check-in line at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Her impeccably tailored navy Armani suit and professional leather briefcase marking her unmistakably as a successful businesswoman who commanded respect in any corporate environment. At 42 years old, she had spent the last 15 challenging yet ultimately rewarding years methodically building her regional airline from a modest two-plane operation run out of a cramped office space into a major carrier employing over 300 dedicated staff members and operating an impressive fleet of 25 state-of-the-art aircraft serving dozens of cities across the southeastern United States with daily flights maintaining exceptional safety records. Today, she was embarking on a particularly important journey, traveling completely incognito to personally observe and evaluate her company's customer service standards firsthand, something she hadn't been able to accomplish in several years due to overwhelming executive responsibilities, constant board meetings, and strategic planning sessions that demanded her undivided attention. Jennifer, the young blonde check-in agent, who appeared to be in her early 20s with hair pulled back in a professional ponytail, immediately frowned with obvious displeasure and unmistakable suspicion the moment Victoria approached her busy station at the crowded counter during peak travel hours. "Can I see your ticket, please?" she asked with clear suspicion in her voice, her condescending tone suggesting that Victoria somehow didn't belong in the business class line alongside the other well-dressed travelers who were being processed efficiently and respectfully by her colleagues at adjacent stations. When Victoria graciously handed over her confirmed business class ticket with a warm and professional smile, Jennifer examined the document with the intense scrutiny of a detective searching for evidence of forgery or fraudulent activity. Turning it over multiple times and holding it up to bright fluorescent lights as if expecting to discover some obvious flaw or irregularity. "How exactly did you manage to get this business class ticket?" she questioned pointedly and aggressively, her hostile implication crystal clear that Victoria must have obtained it through some illegitimate or questionable means, rather than simply purchasing it like any other paying customer would do through normal booking channels. Victoria had unfortunately faced this exact type of blatant racial discrimination countless times throughout her challenging entrepreneurial journey. So she maintained her characteristic composure and professional dignity despite feeling the familiar and painful sting of prejudice burning deep in her chest, like a fire that never quite extinguished completely. When Victoria politely and professionally requested to speak with a supervisor about this obvious discrepancy in available seating and the suspicious treatment she was receiving from the check-in staff, Jennifer rolled her eyes dramatically with exaggerated annoyance and called over Robert, a seasoned 20-year veteran gate agent who carried himself with an insufferable air of unquestionable authority and superiority over passengers seeking assistance with their travel arrangements. "What seems to be the problem here today?" Robert asked curtly and dismissively, barely bothering to glance in Victoria's direction before addressing Jennifer directly, as if Victoria wasn't even standing right there in front of them, both waiting patiently for a reasonable explanation of the situation unfolding before her. Jennifer quickly launched into her carefully crafted and deliberately misleading version of the events that had just transpired, adding her own prejudiced interpretation and twisted spin to the situation for maximum dramatic effect, designed to paint Victoria in the worst possible light to her supervisor. "This woman here is claiming that she somehow has some kind of legitimate business class ticket. but I honestly think there might be some sort of major system error or serious misunderstanding involved in this particular situation that needs immediate clarification and professional resolution." Robert took Victoria's official airline documents with obvious reluctance and visible annoyance written clearly across his weathered face, his dismissive body language and condescending demeanor clearly suggesting that he was doing her an enormous favor by even bothering to look at her supposedly questionable paperwork and documentation. After conducting what appeared to be nothing more than a cursory and half-hearted glance at his computer screen, for barely 30 seconds, he shook his head with theatrical disappointment and spoke in an increasingly condescending tone that dripped with false sympathy and barely concealed contempt for someone he obviously considered undeserving of respectful treatment. "Unfortunately, exactly as my experienced and reliable agent has already explained to you quite clearly, business class is completely sold out for today's flight to Chicago, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about that unfortunate situation. However, as a special gesture of goodwill from our airline company, we can generously offer you a premium economy seat at absolutely no additional charge to you whatsoever." The patronizing and deeply insulting tone in his voice made it crystal clear that he genuinely believed he was being extraordinarily generous and accommodating toward someone he obviously considered undeserving of such preferential treatment based purely on his prejudiced assumptions about her background and social status. Victoria quickly realized that this unfortunate and deeply troubling situation was actually presenting her with a valuable and educational opportunity to observe exactly how her own employees treated passengers who lacked the power, influence, or social connections to effectively fight back against obvious discrimination and unfair treatment from airline personnel who should have known better than to engage in such unprofessional behavior. "I'll graciously accept the premium economy seat that you're offering," she said with remarkable dignity and grace that would have impressed anyone who understood the true magnitude of what was happening in this moment. Though she couldn't help but notice Robert's satisfied and somewhat smug smirk spreading across his weathered face, which clearly suggested that he viewed this outcome as a personal victory in some sort of twisted power game between himself and passengers who dared to question his authority or challenge his decisions. "That's definitely a smart choice on your part, lady," he muttered under his breath, just loudly enough for Victoria to hear his dismissive and insulting comment. His words dripping with condescension and barely concealed contempt for someone he obviously considered beneath his station in life and unworthy of basic respect or professional courtesy. As she walked with measured and dignified steps toward the designated gate area, Victoria discreetly pulled out her personal smartphone and placed a quiet call to her trusted assistant, Sarah, to arrange an urgent emergency meeting with all department heads immediately upon her landing in Chicago, as she wanted to meticulously document every single aspect of the discrimination and poor service she was currently experiencing firsthand from her own company's employees. At the increasingly busy gate area filled with travelers from all walks of life, Victoria positioned herself strategically near a large structural pillar to observe how these same airline employees treated different categories of passengers with vastly different levels of respect, courtesy, and professional attention based solely on their appearance and perceived social status, rather than their worth as human beings deserving of equal treatment. White business travelers wearing expensive suits and carrying luxury luggage were consistently greeted with genuine warm smiles, offered helpful assistance with their carry-on luggage, and addressed respectfully as "sir" and "ma'am," with obvious deference and professional courtesy that every customer deserved to receive regardless of their race, background, or economic status in society. When her designated boarding group was finally called over the crackling intercom system, Victoria joined the orderly line where Jennifer was now stationed at the gate entrance, mechanically scanning boarding passes with the efficiency of someone who had performed this mundane task thousands of times before, without any genuine interest in customer satisfaction or meaningful human connection. Victoria found herself uncomfortably squeezed into the cramped middle seat between an arrogant businessman who had immediately and aggressively claimed both armrests as his personal territory, and a stern middle-aged woman who kept shooting disapproving and openly hostile glances in her direction throughout the lengthy boarding process that seemed to drag on forever. The businessman, dressed in an expensive tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, was talking loudly and obnoxiously on his top-of-the-line smartphone about his latest multi-million-dollar business deals, making absolutely certain that everyone within a 15-foot radius clearly understood his perceived importance and substantial financial success in the competitive corporate world, where he obviously thrived. "Yeah, I normally always fly first class or business class for all my corporate travel requirements," he announced proudly and pompously, while deliberately glancing at Victoria with obvious disdain and thinly veiled disgust, written clearly across his privileged face. "But honestly, they're letting just about anyone sit back here in these premium sections these days, if you know exactly what I mean by that particular statement." Victoria opened her carefully selected paperback book and drew upon her many years of hard-earned experience managing extremely difficult and stressful situations to remain completely calm and composed, despite the obvious hostility and discrimination surrounding her from all directions in this confined space. As the massive Boeing 737 aircraft slowly taxied along the busy runway toward takeoff position, she took this quiet opportunity to reflect deeply on her remarkable journey from being a young, ambitious entrepreneur with nothing but a dream and unwavering determination to becoming the successful owner and operator of a major regional airline company that employed hundreds of dedicated people who depended on her leadership for their livelihoods and career advancement. She had started her ambitious business venture with absolutely nothing except unshakable determination, a carefully crafted business plan that she had worked on tirelessly for months, and an unbreakable belief in her vision for exceptional customer service that would set her company apart from competitors in the cutthroat aviation industry. Facing countless painful rejections from numerous banks and potential investors who simply couldn't see past her race and gender, to recognize her exceptional business acumen and tremendous potential for success. Through years of incredible perseverance, smart and strategic financial decisions, countless 18-hour workdays that tested her resolve and determination, and an absolutely unwavering commitment to providing exceptional customer service to every single passenger, regardless of their background or social status, she had methodically built something truly extraordinary and meaningful from the ground up. Throughout the entire 3-hour flight from Atlanta to Chicago, Victoria witnessed with growing alarm and profound disappointment a deeply troubling and systematic pattern of discriminatory service that absolutely shocked her to her core and fundamentally challenged everything she thought she knew about her company's operational standards and employee training programs that she had personally developed and implemented over the years. The flight attendants working in the cramped cabin consistently provided warm, attentive, and genuinely friendly service to business-class passengers, while simultaneously treating economy-class travelers like unwelcome burdens and inconveniences that they were being forced to tolerate as part of their basic job requirements. Rather than valued customers deserving of respect and professional attention. When Victoria politely requested a simple glass of water during the routine meal service, flight attendant Marcus, a young man in his 20s wearing the standard airline uniform, barely bothered to pause in his hurried stride down the narrow aircraft aisle filled with passengers trying to get comfortable for the long journey ahead. "We'll definitely get to that specific request when we can find the time," he said dismissively, and without making any meaningful eye contact. Then immediately stopped just a few feet away to engage in an animated and pleasant conversation with a well-dressed business-class passenger who had wandered back to the economy section to stretch his legs during the flight. Victoria listened with growing concern and mounting frustration to the numerous complaints and legitimate frustrations being voiced by passengers seated around her regarding consistently delayed flights, mysteriously lost luggage that never seemed to be properly tracked by the airline's supposedly sophisticated computer systems, and increasingly poor customer service that seemed to be becoming the disappointing norm rather than the rare exception that it should have remained. The arrogant businessman seated directly next to her in the aisle seat was particularly vocal and relentlessly critical about his mounting frustrations with what he perceived as the airline's rapidly declining service standards and deteriorating reputation in the competitive aviation industry, completely unaware that he was sitting directly beside the actual owner and founder of the company. He was so harshly criticizing without any knowledge of her true identity or position. This particular airline used to have genuinely decent and reliable service just a few years ago. He complained bitterly and loudly to the woman seated across the narrow aisle from them, making sure his voice carried to nearby passengers who might be listening to his commentary. But lately, it honestly seems like the employees just don't care about their jobs anymore and have completely given up trying to provide quality service to paying customers who deserve better treatment than what they're receiving. As Flight 447 began its gradual descent toward Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Victoria experienced a complex mixture of profound disappointment and steely determination coursing through her mind as she contemplated the significant changes that would need to be implemented immediately throughout the entire organization to restore the company's reputation and core values that had been compromised. She felt genuinely disappointed and deeply saddened by discovering how far her once proud company had fallen from the exceptionally high customer service standards that she had personally established and carefully maintained during the challenging early years of building the business from absolutely nothing into something meaningful and successful in the competitive aviation industry. However, she also felt absolutely determined and energized to use this eye-opening and educational experience as a powerful catalyst for implementing comprehensive and meaningful reform throughout the entire organization at every level of operation, from ground crew workers to executive management personnel who had clearly lost sight of the company's founding principles. The landing was remarkably smooth and professionally executed by the skilled pilots in the cockpit, but Victoria deliberately remained seated in her uncomfortable middle seat as other passengers around her rushed frantically to gather their belongings and push aggressively toward the exits in their typical hurry to disembark and continue with their busy schedules and important appointments that awaited them at their various destinations. She wanted to carefully observe the disembarkation process and see firsthand how her employees handled the inevitable chaos and stress that always accompanied the end of every commercial flight, regardless of the time of day, destination, or passenger load that they were dealing with on any given day. True to the disappointing form she had observed consistently throughout the entire journey, the gate agents were providing obviously differential treatment based solely on passenger class and perceived social status, rather than treating everyone with equal respect and courtesy as company policy clearly stated and as basic human decency demanded from any professional service provider. Business class. Travelers received effusive thanks and genuinely warm farewells from smiling staff members who seemed genuinely pleased to serve them and wished them well on their continuing journeys, while economy passengers received nothing more than perfunctory nods and dismissive gestures, at best from the same employees who had been so attentive to their preferred customers. When Victoria finally approached the gate counter, where Robert was mechanically organizing his scattered paperwork with obvious boredom and complete disinterest in customer interaction, she decided to test his attitude and level of professionalism one final time before revealing her true identity and position within the company hierarchy. Within exactly 30 minutes of the aircraft touching down safely at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Victoria had efficiently used her executive access card to enter the airport's secure administrative wing and had successfully assembled all 12 of her department heads in the main conference room for an urgent and completely unexpected meeting that would fundamentally change the trajectory of the entire company's future operations and organizational culture. None of them had any idea whatsoever why they had been suddenly summoned for this emergency gathering on a Tuesday afternoon, and several of the senior executives looked visibly anxious and genuinely concerned about the unexpected and unusual nature of this unscheduled conference that had interrupted their regular duties and important meetings with clients and stakeholders. Victoria entered the spacious and well-appointed conference room with quiet confidence and immediately took her customary place at the head of the polished oak conference table. Her commanding presence and serious demeanor instantly demanding and receiving complete attention and respectful silence from all 12 of her department heads who recognized the gravity of the situation unfolding before them. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began with the unmistakable authority and gravitas of someone who had built the entire company from absolutely nothing through sheer determination, innovative thinking, and exceptional business acumen that had been tested countless times over the years. "This afternoon, I had what I can only describe as a profoundly educational and deeply eye-opening experience flying as a completely regular passenger on our airline. Not in any special VIP capacity, not with any executive treatment or special recognition, but simply as an ordinary customer who had paid her own hard-earned money for business-class service and reasonably expected to receive the level of professional treatment that we promise to all our valued passengers in our marketing materials and company mission statement." She paused deliberately and strategically to let the full significance and serious implications of her carefully chosen words sink deeply into the minds of her listening executives, watching with keen interest as several department heads began shifting uncomfortably in their expensive leather chairs as they began to understand what might be coming next in this unexpected confrontation. What I personally experienced during this routine flight was nothing short of a complete and total betrayal of every single principle and core value that this company was originally founded upon 15 years ago when we started this journey together with high hopes and noble intentions. After spending nearly an hour outlining her comprehensive reform plan and new company policies to the assembled department heads, who listened with increasing concern and determination to do better in the future, Victoria specifically requested that the 3 employees who had directly discriminated against her during her travel experience be brought to the conference room immediately for a face-to-face meeting that would determine their future with the company and serve as an example to other employees about the serious consequences of engaging in discriminatory behavior toward customers. Jennifer, Robert, and Marcus arrived at the executive conference room, looking genuinely confused and noticeably annoyed about being unexpectedly pulled from their regular shifts without any explanation or advance notice from their supervisors, having no idea that their careers were about to change forever in ways they could never have imagined possible when they woke up that morning. They had absolutely no idea who Victoria really was behind her professional appearance and calm demeanor, or why they had been summoned to meet with senior executives in what appeared to be some sort of formal disciplinary proceeding that made them increasingly nervous and uncomfortable as they took their seats around the imposing conference table. Robert checked his expensive watch impatiently and spoke first with his characteristic dismissive attitude that had served him poorly throughout his career and would continue to create problems for him in future endeavors, regardless of where he worked or what industry he chose to pursue. Look, I honestly don't know what this meeting is supposed to be about, but I'm scheduled to be working a mandatory double shift today, and I really can't afford to waste valuable time sitting here in meetings when there are passengers to process and flights to manage throughout the busy afternoon schedule that we're trying to maintain despite staffing challenges. Can we please make this quick so I can get back to my actual job responsibilities and the work that actually matters? His dismissive tone and impatient demeanor were exactly identical to the disrespectful way he had treated Victoria just a few hours earlier at the busy check-in counter, demonstrating that his poor attitude was consistent across all interactions, regardless of the circumstances or people involved in any given situation. Victoria smiled slightly with grim satisfaction and responded in a calm, measured voice that carried undertones of authority that should have warned them something significant was happening in this room that would affect their professional futures in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Victoria stood up gracefully from her leather executive chair and walked with measured and confident steps to the large whiteboard at the front of the conference room. Her professional demeanor and commanding presence demanding absolute attention from every single person present in the now silent room where you could hear a pin drop as tension filled the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. "Please allow me to properly introduce myself to all of you," she said with quiet but unmistakable authority, turning slowly and deliberately to face the three increasingly nervous employees whose facial expressions were rapidly shifting from confusion to dawning horror and complete panic as they began to sense the magnitude of their situation and the serious consequences that awaited them for their unprofessional conduct. "My name is Victoria Hamilton, and I am the founder, chief executive officer, and majority owner of this airline company that employs each and every one of you and provides your paychecks every 2 weeks without fail, allowing you to support your families and maintain your standard of living." The color drained completely from all three faces as the full impact and devastating implications of her words hit them like a physical blow to their entire sense of reality and understanding of their circumstances in this moment of reckoning. Jennifer's mouth fell open in complete shock and utter disbelief, her hands trembling as she realized the enormous mistake she had made and the career-ending implications of her discriminatory behavior toward someone who held her professional future in her hands. While Robert gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white with the pressure of his grip as he struggled to process what was happening before his eyes. Marcus looked like he might become physically ill right there in the conference room as the reality of his situation became crystal clear, and he understood that his employment was about to be terminated for his unprofessional conduct and discriminatory treatment of a paying customer. "That's absolutely right," Victoria continued with calm but unmistakable authority, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years of building and successfully running a business that had grown from nothing into a major regional carrier, serving thousands of passengers daily across multiple states and employing hundreds of dedicated professionals. "The woman that you treated with such obvious contempt and blatant disrespect, the woman that you automatically assumed was lying about her ticket, without any evidence whatsoever, the woman that you spoke to as if she were somehow beneath you and unworthy of basic human dignity. That woman owns this entire company and has the authority to make decisions about your continued employment and professional future in the aviation industry. This is why truth always comes to light, and justice always finds its way. If this story shows you that dignity and respect matter more than assumptions, make sure you subscribe to see more stories where justice prevails. Because when we stand together against discrimination, we make real change happen. After immediately terminating all 3 discriminatory employees and implementing sweeping policy changes throughout the organization that would affect every aspect of operations, from customer service protocols to hiring practices and employee evaluation procedures. Victoria spent the remainder of that eventful day and well into the evening hours working closely with her dedicated leadership team to develop a comprehensive cultural transformation plan that would address every aspect of customer service and employee behavior at all levels of the company structure, from entry-level positions to senior management roles. Extensive new training programs were carefully designed and implemented with valuable input from diversity experts and customer service professionals who understood the complexities of creating inclusive workplace environments that fostered respect and equality. Hiring practices were completely revised to include thorough sensitivity screening and cultural competency assessments for all potential employees at every level of the organization, and customer service protocols were thoroughly overhauled from top to bottom with clear consequences for violations and meaningful rewards for exceptional service that went above and beyond customer expectations. Most importantly, for the long-term success and sustainability of these transformative changes, she established a rigorous system of regular, completely unannounced quality assessments where senior executives would travel as ordinary passengers to monitor service levels and ensure accountability at every level of the organization, preventing future discrimination from taking root and spreading throughout the company culture like a cancer that could destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. The next morning, Victoria stood confidently before a packed auditorium filled with airline employees from every department and level of the company. Her presence commanding immediate respect and attention from everyone in the room who understood that significant changes were coming that would affect their daily work and career prospects in meaningful ways that would benefit both employees and customers alike. Yesterday, she began with clear authority and conviction that resonated throughout the large space. I personally experienced something that no passenger should ever have to endure on our airline or any other carrier in the aviation industry. But it also served as a powerful reminder of exactly why I started this company 15 years ago, with nothing but a dream and unwavering determination to create something better than what existed in the marketplace. She looked out thoughtfully at hundreds of faces, showing various degrees of concern, curiosity, and genuine determination to do better in the future and restore the company's reputation for excellence and fairness in all its dealings with customers and employees alike. Victoria's journey had proven that sometimes the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected places, and that truth and justice will always find a way to prevail against discrimination and prejudice. But Victoria's story is just one example of how truth always comes to light in the aviation industry. Next video. Watch what happens when a retired Air Force colonel's 30-year military secret is revealed at airport security. When 200 soldiers witness someone questioning a war hero's uniform, the most respectful moment in aviation history unfolds. You won't believe what happens next. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and turn on notifications for new content. Don't forget to hit the like button if this story moved you, and share your thoughts and opinions about this situation in the comments below.